And let's go back to that conversation with Natasha Phiri, where the two-day multi-party convention is underway in Kempton Park, east of Johannesburg. 7 political parties, including independent organizations, have put aside their differences and negotiating a pre-election agreement. Natasha Phiri now standing by. Natasha, good morning once again. I guess basically what's being reiterated is what we heard before around what they're trying to achieve with this Moonshot Pact.
Definitely, Aljan, and let's just actually get straight into the interview because Professor William Gumede actually has to go chair the session right now, and they're actually waiting for him. Prof, we heard you there speaking to members of the media and various political parties. You will be now chairing the session. A common ground needs to be found amongst these political parties to chart a new way forward. How easy is this going to be, specifically because these various political parties have different ideologies? We heard there John Steenhuisen saying that egos need to be put aside.
No, absolutely. I think the critical thing is going to be for all of them, all of the leaders, to put the ego aside, to think about the bigger picture of South Africa, to think South African Inc. What, and put aside also, petty past fights that I had, whether, in former parties and rivalry and so on, and just look at the bigger picture.
Prof, but how will it work? So does one political party actually lead the pact? Because this is something new to South Africa and the South African system. And how do you think South Africans will actually take this pact?
The important thing is in a negotiation like this, every party has to compromise. Obviously what parties do, you put up your 3-4 non-negotiatables, and then we begin to negotiate around it. But the big issue really is the the interest of South Africa. That's the most important. And what we will need here from individual leaders is also the political maturity. And I think really the parties have actually reached, for me, a very critical point by asking an outsider like me to come and help them navigate this process. It's already showing maturity.
But what if some political parties don't agree with the set of guidelines? What then happens? I mean, are these guidelines going to be binding?
The idea is once, one day is agreed upon guidelines, it becomes binding. And that is, in the negotiations, you agree collectively. And it's important. It's not one party's policies or whether the party is a big party. It's not. It is a collective. What is collective? Policy platform, and that is part of the negotiations.
And then just lastly, so if I decide to pull out and we've already formed this pact, we've already signed an agreement, what then happens?
Obviously, everything depends on, the parties themselves. They must hold themselves accountable, and they're also held accountable by other parties, but they're also held accountable by the public, because this is a public process, and because it's a public process, they are held accountable to the public. But I also, so although what I'm trying to do here is to get a core group to agree, but there's also other opposition parties still, and sort of my mandate is to engage with some of the other political parties still, so it's still ongoing to bring many of those who share the same values, to bring them on board also.
Professor, we'll definitely catch up with you throughout the course of the day, and thank you so much for being patient with us. Thank you. Aljan, of course, that was Professor William Gumede. He actually has to go chair a session right now. Inside, of course, we've relieved him. But basically, the underlying tone, amongst all these other political parties, the leaders of the political parties that actually spoke today, was that this is not about them as politicians. This is about South Africans on the ground, Aljan, and, the greater good of society. They also said that it's not about the hate that they have towards the ANC, but it's about the people of South Africa putting aside their political differences for the greater good of society, and to ensure that next year they actually come out victorious at those 2024 polls. But Aljan, we are here throughout the day, camping here, and of course we will be getting regular updates from Professor William Gumede and also various political parties on what has been happening, what the talks are behind closed doors. And we can't expect them to be all nice talks. They have been indicating that there will be robust discussions amongst the various political parties. But with that said, it's back to you in studio.
Thank you so much, Natasha Phiri, there at the Moonshot Pact convention that is underway in Kempton Park.